So welcome again. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see a large crowd here with us. People are still joining. But we can start with a very short introduction. This webinar has been co-organized by the project ULADS and MOVE21. We will show you a couple of slides about these two projects just as a means of introduction. So Lucien, can you please start sharing your screen?
So I hope you're hearing me, and very quickly I'll make my screen. And now I hope you see the presentation full screen. So very quickly about MOVE21, what's the project about? We proposed ourselves to make it in one slide. We ended up doing it in 2 slides. So MOVE21, it's a Horizon 2020 project. It's a demonstration project, so a lot of focus on the actual implementation in the city. It is led by the city of Oslo, and there are living labs in Oslo, Gothenburg, and Hamburg. Also a very ambitious replication program with Munich, Rome, and Bologna involved as partners in the project. And we also have a Cascade Cities program. These cities will join us later in the project and will help with uptake, dissemination, transferability aspects. Now, what is it all about? I won't present all components of the project now, but it's about transforming European cities and functional urban areas into climate-neutral, connected, multimodal urban nodes for smart and clean mobility and logistics. The urban node component is key here, so we're not looking only at making urban mobility clean and efficient, but also looking at the impact and the wider role of cities on the wider TEN-T network. So as part of the project, the cities involved will test, deploy, replicate, and upscale various zero-emission solutions. There is a co-creation component, so in the Living Lab, there is a specific methodology, and the idea is to develop a self-sustaining partnership that will live beyond the project lifetime. We look at both technological and non-technological solutions. We consider aspects like social cohesion or transport and health equity. There is, as I said, a clear focus on TEN-T aspects. So there is, as you might have noticed, all Living Lab cities and replicator cities are on the ScanMed corridor. So one of the activities is to establish a ScanMed corridor observatory as a platform for coordination, collaboration, and data sharing for all urban nodes on the corridor. Also, we want to engage all urban nodes on the TEN-T network. As you might know, there are policy changes starting next year. So there are more urban nodes, and the TEN-T policy is more open towards the role of cities into the efficiency of the policy and general approaches. So we want to contribute to that discussion, and in this way, disseminate the results of our project and of the cities involved. Please follow us on social media. Also, we have a very nice website, so we'll announce all our activities there. Maybe it's good to say that the project started in May last year, so the project is at the beginning. It will go on for 48 months, and we'll prepare a lot of things that will be of relevance. And now up to you, Ariana.
Yes, so I will shortly introduce ULADS, which stands for Urban Logistics as an On-Demand Service. Our objective is to foster sustainable and livable cities through the deployment of innovative, shared, zero-emission logistics while dealing with the impact of the on-demand economy. Next slide, please. We are a big consortium. We have 26 partners, and the project was originally supposed to run for the 36 months, but we recently got an extension of the project, so it will last for 6 months more. We have 3.15 million budget, and we also are working with cities. We have 3 lighthouse cities, Bremen, which is also the coordinator of the project, Mechelen and Groningen. And today you will hear more about what the city of Groningen is gonna do in the project. And also for us, replication is a huge component of the project. So we have 4 satellite cities, Bergen, Alba Iulia, Rome, and Edinburgh, that will be involved throughout the project to replicate select measures from the ULAT solutions. You can go to the next slide. You can email me if you have any questions, and as well you can look for ULADs on the internet, and you will find our website and all our social media. I was shorter than you, Lucian. So without further ado, I think we can start with our interesting set of presentations for today. And I remind you that you can at any moment write in the chat, and we have 2 moments throughout the webinar where we will pick up your questions for the speakers. The first speaker is Damian Stubbe. He is a project leader at WIL, Empowering Logistics, one of the partners of ULATS, and he will give us an overview of innovative multimodal hubs, which have an integration component between urban logistics and passengers flow. So the floor is yours, Damian. You can share your screen. Perfect, very efficient. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. As Ariana said, I work for WIL. WIL is a spearhead cluster for logistics in Flanders, a member organization of about 600 companies, but also knowledge institutes and cities. And together with those members, we start up regional projects for innovation in logistics. But we are also active in international projects such as ULATS. In ULATS, we have the role of coordinating the testings in those 3 cities Ariana explained, Mechelen, Groningen, and in Bremen. I was asked to give a bit of an introduction to what multimodal hubs are and what they can mean for last mile delivery. So I will give later on some best examples as well that are already installed in Europe somewhere. But I'll start with giving a bit of the concept of multimodal hubs and how they are introduced in last mile delivery. Basically, the multimodal mobility hubs, they came out of a need to more create a better flow of passenger transportation in urban areas. Cities started to invest a lot also in creating mobility as a service points, and those access points, they are called multimodal mobility hubs. The cities started introducing them into their SUMs, sustainable urban mobility plans, to create that livability in the urban area, and can really have to emphasize the word livability because I think will come back as a need also in the logistics SOAPs, the sustainable urban logistic plans. Those access points for mobility as a service, we call them multimodal hubs. You can find usually public transportation there, some vehicle sharing, of bike sharing, of car sharing, micro-mobility points as well. And we already see the first basic services of logistics there, like locker systems or cargo bikes rental schemes for personal use. This solved a lot of issues around person or passenger mobility, but cities are still struggling with logistic streams into the city. The last and first mile logistic, they put a lot of pressure on livability in the cities by vehicles parking in the middle of the road for unloading or loading goods, creating congestion, creating greenhouse gases. And the first reaction of cities is also to, okay, we need to put on some restrictions, some guidelines of when they can deliver their goods or when they can do pickup times. Those are called window times for delivery. In cities, we see them, for example, between 6 and 11, you can deliver your goods into the inner city. Or parking policies where you can park. They are usually not a final solution to your issues, because in the end, your end customer, those local merchants, the inhabitants of the city, they still need their goods, and they still need it delivered at a certain time that they are, well, not asleep or at work. So cities are in need to support and guide the logistics in urban areas, so they are in need of sustainable urban logistic plans. One of the first SOPs that our cities are thinking of usually are creation of consolidation centers, creation of multimodal hubs, where the delivery or all the goods that need to be delivered in the inner city are delivered in the consolidation center, and the last mile will be performed with a more suitable vehicle, zero emissive, like a cargo bike or a zero emissive van, smaller already, and they will have some more delivery possibilities than the bigger vehicles going into the city. Those person mobility hubs are usually also very interesting places for logistics. Why? Well, basically your end customer is already there. So the delivery of goods through locker systems is a very interesting point for, like mobility hubs are a very interesting point for lockers to place, but also there is space there for transferring your goods from a vehicle towards cargo bikes, and there are public transportation going from point A to B. You have goods that need to go from point A to B, and you can start up some cargo hitching schemes. What are cargo hitching schemes? Well, you see some more examples later on in my presentation, but also in the presentation from some colleagues here. So I will not go into deep of that right now. I just want to give a few best or innovative ideas to give an idea of what multimodal modes can be in last mile city logistics. First of all, very well known already are micro hubs for bike logistics. We see them in a closed circuit of bigger companies to shorten their last mile performed by e-cargo bikes, but also in more open systems, such as in Berlin, you have the micro hub Amsterdam, where delivery is done at the outskirts of the city, brought into the city to the micro hub, and bike couriers can perform the last mile delivery from that point. Ritel, we are doing some tests with them in the ULATS project as well. They are containerizing the micro hubs and the further on bike cargo. So the dimensions are basically the same as a Euro pallet, which is very interesting in downsizing the handling, which is usually the biggest cost. And to make it economically viable, you need to reduce your handling costs as much as possible. Something a little bit more futuristic is the Megway pipeline. I'm still putting it in here because they will start building this in 2025 in West London. Basically, it's a pipeline underground from about 7 kilometers from the outskirts of London, going all the way to Stamford Bridge, west side of London, where with different stops, the goods can be transferred to bike logistics. All those stops are basically multimodal logistics hubs. It's an open system exploited by one operator, but you can pay for capacity daily. This amount of goods will go through the pipeline, or you can pay for one-time use. Waterways are also already quite introduced in last mile logistics, mainly on the field of construction hubs. Why? Well, it's not very handy to have all your goods already on your construction site in the inner city, because you need that space to build. So it's more interesting to only have the goods that you need that day, and the rest you can leave at the construction hub right outside of the city. Barging is already introduced quite a lot in those construction hubs, because building materials are usually very heavy and therefore interesting to go over water. But earlier, or in the end of last year, we had also in Liège, Belgium, demonstration of doing this for parcel delivery. And in some cities, waterway logistics are quite introduced. If you think about Venice, it's basically the only option you have. Railway city cargo is also already quite introduced in some cities such as Frankfurt, but also Bremen, Zurich. You can find cargo trams. In Amsterdam, they did testings with this. They are not going to continue it in Amsterdam, sadly. But the idea is that from the outside of the city, the tram stop there, and you put on cargo and you bring it into the city, and at the tram stop, which will function as a logistics hub at that point, it will be transferred to bike logistics. In Lithuania, you have a company, City that uses public trains for same-day delivery of goods between the city of Vilnius and Kaunas, the two largest cities in Lithuania. The last one I want to give some attention to is a cargo hitching scheme we are going to test in Ulaats, where Viavan, a company that is about ride sharing and giving it sort of taxi service, will combine passenger transportation with parcel delivery at larger industrial sites in Bremen and in Mechelen. Well, we will do basically the same, with a very big difference that the vehicle performing the last mile delivery is actually an autonomous vehicle at a business park, and we will put a locker, parcel locker inside it, and the users of the vehicle can pick up their parcel in the vehicle, or the companies at the business park can use it to deliver their goods as well, or basically smaller parcels, of course. That was my introduction. What I really want to give as a main takeaway is that, well, the size of those multimodal hubs can be pretty much anything, depending on where you are in your supply chain. Are you at the consolidation center at the border of the city? Are you at a parcel lockers with bike logistics? And the other one that I want to give as a main takeaway is that if you look at the infrastructure that is already in the city, you can build thereupon to create multimodal hubs. If you have waterways into the city, if you have tramways in your city, that can be used for last mile logistics. And there are some best examples around in Europe to base yourself on. So thank you. If you have any questions, you can mail me, or if it's about Ulaats, contact@ulaats.eu.
Thank you very much, Domian. Very interesting point, I would say, the idea of looking at what is already there and build upon that. We have a couple of questions in the chat already, so thank you for those that are being active there. We will go to the next presentation right away, and then we will ask them to the first two speakers. So our next speaker for today is Giacomo Lozzi. He's a research manager at Tre Lab at the University Roma Tre in Rome. And he will give us an overview of the logistic operator needs when it comes to using microapps, specifically in the experience of the beautiful city of Rome, where both me and Giacomo are from. Giacomo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arianna. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to this webinar today. So Arianna already introduced me. My name is Giacomo Lozzi, and I work at Tre Lab. And Tre Lab is a research group working on transport-related policies and innovation. And among other projects, we are involved in MOVE21 as well, together with Rome Mobility Agency. So that's also why we are here and we address this specific topic. We, as Tre Lab, coordinate the Living Lab, Logistics Living Lab of Rome, which I will talk more about in a few minutes. And we were invited to talk about the needs when it comes to using micro hubs for logistics. And of course, each case is different. We started working on these aspects in Rome, so we will present mainly what we know from that situation, knowing that many elements could be common to different cities, although not in all cases. So this is the outline of the presentation, which frames a bit the issue in a wider planning and participation context. The first point is the lack of stakeholder engagement. So that was the situation 7-8 years ago. Through some projects, we had this kind of surveys to know what operators would consider as main areas of intervention. And one of the most important ones was indeed the lack of stakeholder engagement. So the agency took some measures in that regard, and to try to reverse this trend, both through a strong participatory process in the preparation of the SAMP in Rome that was adopted in 2019, and also through European projects such as City Lab to adopt new participatory approaches. So as regards the SAMP, the result was a list of measures to be adopted in the short, medium, and long term regarding urban freight, and based on a consultation coordinated by Tre Lab in the SAMP process. Among these, as you can see, there are also micro apps and parcel loggers, so that's something we need to address. Another measure contained in the SAMP was the establishment of a living lab to encourage stakeholder participation. And the Logistics Living Lab was originated within the City Lab project that took place a few years ago. And the idea there was to indeed test new approaches and methodologies for living labs, specifically for urban freight. And then the Living Lab was officially launched on a permanent basis on February 24th, 2020, so the day before the first COVID case was found in Italy. So that was quite unfortunate for something that needs to gather people together. But anyway, we set up this permanent working table on urban logistics, coordinated by Tre Lab and the Mobility Agency of Rome, to involve continuously the public and private stakeholder around urban freight topic, and with the idea of co-create, test, and implement solutions for urban freight in line with what was defined in the SAMP. We started with few participants, and over time the group has increased with public actors, associations, and organizations, and companies that are of different size, very small ones, but also the big players often take part in the activities. So what we do within the project is to, within the Living Lab is to consult, exchange, and network besides facilitating the testing of solutions. I will come to that part later. But so for this part, we have regular plenary meetings where we exchange about local projects, we do networking. Then we provide some feedback on limited traffic zones rules when it comes to new regulation. We try to gather the views, perspectives of operators and bring them to the public authority. And one other thing we have done that is relevant for today is to try to analyze the user needs and requirements for micro hubs, locations, and operations. This is something that it's very relevant both from a public and private perspective. So it's quite an issue to understand the needs, keeping in mind the complexity of this exercise and because of the heterogeneity of the actors involved, as you could see from the previous slide. So I will start with some public-led initiatives, and then there will be others that are more from the private sector, and I will also present then the related needs and requirements. So in framework of the user key project, that it's another project in which Rome is involved. The idea is to create, actually this has started, Rome has secured a space to set up a multimodal charging hub for electric vehicles, and it's a bit what Dominic was saying before, a multimodal mobility hub, and this also includes the space for cargo bikes. So we have consulted stakeholders also to understand how this place should be shaped in order for them to use it. Another initiative of the mobility agency that is still under discussion because it's a bit complex, but can be very interesting, is to use the tourist bus parking areas to also have a space, a platform for consolidation and loading and unloading of goods. Because, of course, as you know, because of the pandemic, tourist flows have reduced, but anyway, these spaces have some spare areas that could be used also when the flows increase again. So that's another idea that we have asked operators their opinion on. And regarding these two projects, just to give a non-exhaustive list of elements that came up. Regarding the location, what operators need, it's something that is not too far from the center, that it's easily accessible from outside the city, and it's also accessible for vans or trucks and cargo bikes. In terms of space, it has to be big enough to manage all the number of packages that move around and favor the transshipment process, and also the simultaneous presence of trucks and cargo bikes. In terms of energy, the hub must be equipped with charging stations, especially for the bikes, and also accessories like repair services, cold rooms for refrigerated goods, for example, and other services. And most of all, certainty, it's important. So the availability of the area must be guaranteed after the experimentation phase, if it goes well, of course. Then a few months ago, we also launched a call for ideas to encourage the stakeholders to propose their own projects or initiatives to be implemented or strengthened in the framework of current or future projects of course, MOVE21 is one of these. So we want to know what they would like to do in order to frame these initiatives in what the municipality wants to do and what we can support as a university. And the result was that most of the proposals had as their objective the experimentation of new models of micro hubs. So now I will show a few of them. I don't mention the name of the companies because it's not fully public, but just to give an idea of what they are thinking of. One of these is the neighborhood distribution hub. So the idea is to use local markets that sometimes are a bit underused and to give an opportunity for new use and place there not only B2B services, but also B2C as parcel loggers. And again, it's a bit what Damian was saying, that then you have your clients directly there. But could also provide a space for transshipment and the use of do the last mile with eco-friendly vehicles starting from there, and added value services or needs for citizens can be the storage in smart loggers, for companies again storage and also requests for deliveries. And for cargo bikers, the presence of services like toilets or charging stations. Another idea is using micro hubs for reverse logistics. So when you distribute B2C, but also to shops, sometimes drivers lose time in collecting the packages, the empty packages, and in order to do this kind of activities, you don't need a driver that can continue with their route, but you can have an additional service with cargo bikes that goes to the shops and sorts out the goods in the shelves and can help to collect the packages to be recycled. So the micro hub can also serve as a place to collect these packages, and then you need bins to collect them. Another idea is to use an integrated model, van, micro hub, and cargo bikes. We have estimations made by companies themselves that with a van, you do 120 stops in 8 hours in one day, and at the same time you can use 3 cargo bikes to deliver the same number of stops, but in half time. So this transshipment between the van and bikes already happens, but it's in random spaces, so you have to align in terms of time, while with a micro hub you could you don't need to wait for the van to arrive or vice versa, the cargo bike to arrive in order to make this transshipment. In terms of next steps, what we want to do, first of all, some general considerations in order for these micro hub models to reach the large-scale deployment. The key role of major players has to be considered. Without them, you can't ensure the volumes needed. It's important also to work on models that allow the sharing of space, not necessarily of operations, but space sharing is probably needed when the municipality puts in some areas available. And that's something that's happening in some cities like Berlin and Prague, so we want to work on this. But first of all, you need a strong political will in terms of access regulation and space for freight in order to make this operation possible with bold policies. In 2022, there will be the preparation of the SALP for Rome for both the urban and metropolitan area. As you see, Rome is already quite big, the red part, but the metropolitan area includes a lot of municipalities in the surroundings. So it's very important when we consider logistics to consider the peri-urban and regional areas. So we're happy to contribute through the Living Lab to this process. We as university are also setting up some participatory tools that can facilitate the engagement of stakeholders. One of this is through the L3D project that gives a new dimension of participation through interactive tools that then can help to ex ante define the preferences of stakeholders and then represent the scenarios that they have contributed to define through interactive movies, where you can see then what your choices imply for the urban logistics landscape. This is a project that it's funded by the Lazio region, and we have started working on as university. And then last but not least, we work on synergies and integration of existing projects through the call of ideas for ideas that I mentioned before, but also we want to maximize the synergic potential of different projects that especially the mobility agency is involved in, like ULAD's User Key, MOVE21, of course, but also Handshake, that it's about bikes specifically, and other projects like LEAD and this one, L3D. So the idea is to put everything together and favor the exchange between these projects, as it's already happening for some of them. And thanks to the great work of the mobility agency that we support as a university, but they have to do this like implementation. So we are happy to support them and the municipality in this work. So that's also something we will do with MOVE21, and I hope I gave a useful overview, and I'm available for questions and clarifications. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. There are a lot of questions in the chat, so thanks everybody for the engagement. I will start with one of the first questions that was asked about the money. So who is financing logistic micro hubs? And also there were several questions around the business model. So how does the business model work for logistic micro hubs? I don't think there is one business model that fits all, but maybe we can ask the first two speakers, Damian and Giacomo, to elaborate on these two questions, please.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that question comes, because if you only, well, basically you need to look at it as from an economical point of view to give it viability. If you don't, in the end, a company needs to make money. If they don't, it will not continue. But we see, like you said, Ariane, different schemes of finance, where usually the overall, if it's an open system, the city provides quite some financial inputs, but the exploitation of the micro hub afterwards is done by another partner, and they will pay the city some kind of a rental scheme or something. We also see quite a lot of micro hubs that are in a closed circuit, like in Belgium. You have bpost, the biggest postal service or a courier service of the country, where they have in Mechelen an eco zone with micro hubs, and that's financed by themselves, but the city will provide, for example, space or some kind of facilities of passage at certain hours or something. And this way a city can also help companies or initiatives without actually financing them. Land use is quite an important incentive these days in cities.
Thank you, Domin. I think this is also linked to a couple of other questions that were asked, exactly about the space part of the deal. So Marco from Rome, for example, asked what role does the municipality play? And I think there was also another question about how is the space then managed? And I think that's where really the crucial point is to get everybody around the table and have this discussion on space. I don't know, Giacomo, if you want to chip in on that.
Yeah, I think the question from Marco, as is from the Mobility Agency of Rome, was for other experiences. So that's also something indeed that we would like to know. Indeed, when it comes to Rome, the two first projects I mentioned indeed are areas that the municipality could put at the disposal of operators. So in that case, the business model has to consider to use that space. Then indeed you have to see if that should be in exchange of a fee, how it works. That's something we have to test with them. But what we have tried to do also with the calls for ideas is to really start from something that operators would do anyway, that would not need a specific funding. So we don't necessarily want to include these ideas in project proposals, but rather to facilitate the operators to implement these ideas on their own with some support. So we want to hear from them what they need in this regard. So the business model comes from them. What I think is important that I mentioned is really that the municipality favors a regulation that sets up a regulation that favors such a model. So if you make very difficult to enter with old vans, then a model with cargo bikes is more suitable. Like in Brussels, this is happening with making the space car-free and making it accessible only in certain times, and the rest of the day is accessible for cargo bikes. Then you see as operator the feasibility of that model. Then the specific business models should be, we shouldn't be the persons answering for that, because we don't know. And then if you want, I just address a couple of questions that I saw specifically for this. One was about who are the main players, and it's UPS, GLS, DHL. They are all part of the Living Lab. They attend, and we are also talking to them in terms of what they want to do in this regard. And in other cities, they are very active on this initiative. So we have to see what they would need to use this model also in Rome.
I want to pick in on, well, also a bit the last question that came up on this. It's really important as a city to create also a vision on how you want this to grow, those micro hubs, because you don't want to have them anywhere in the city. You need to have a kind of a plan, a vision, how you want to roll out your logistics, and that's the importance of creating sustainable urban logistic plans. And I cannot stress that enough, because if not, you will get kind of a wild grow as well. And this will get in the end, or might get in the end, a counter effect. So if you start in the beginning already from a slope, and you create those slopes in collaboration with the stakeholders, then you get you create a vision that is carried out by all your stakeholders and creates also that livability in the inner city.
Thank you, Damian. Maybe if there was also another question for you on on the Via Van trial in Bremen regarding how to optimize the route, if this gets expanded also to parcel, and if you see it as first mile also, or only for short range deliveries. Obviously, this is all to be tested, so the test, I think, will be about finding these replies as well. So you can follow you lads and learn how this will end, but I don't know if you want to already say something about it, Dominic.
I think it's if it's a first mile or a short end, it doesn't really matter that much. It's more how you prioritize in your follow-up app. Basically, you put you see there's also those packages as same as a person goes from point A to B. You need to optimize your routes, but you also put prioritization in timing deadlines. A person that needs to go from A to B, he doesn't or she doesn't have time. It needs to be as fast as possible. As for a package, you usually know, okay, it needs to be delivered by noon, by the end of the day. So you have this time to deliver this, and this can be taken up in the optimization of the routing. At a certain point, this will get important, of course, because you only have a deadline of another and the following of the packages that can be done with the track and trace system of the company sending it. So you will have, for example, a UPS, DHL. They will use the services of a Via van maybe to deliver the goods from point A to their consolidation center. And the tracking starts from the client at the point that it already gives in their own system.
Thank you very much. I think we need to move on with the next presentation, but we will try to ask the remaining question in the panel debate towards after the next two speakers. So the next one on the list is Schauke, so from the city of Groningen, and Schauke will present the integration of multimodal passenger and logistic flows in a park and ride facility, which also will be tested in the ULADS project.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, very well.
Perfect. My name is Sjouke van der Vlucht. I work for the city of Groningen as an advisor in urban development, and I'm specialized in urban logistics. I'll try to make my screen big. I think that worked. First, I'll give a short introduction of Groningen. Groningen is a city in the north of the Netherlands with a population of 230,000 inhabitants. It's a very compact city. You can see it on the photo. In front, you see the inner city, and the hinterland is quite close. And I think from all the edges of the city, within 15 minutes, you can go by bike to the inner city. So the compactness of the city also helps us being a cycling city. The motto of the city is being a green, happy, and healthy city. And in a way, we're doing a good job, because on the chart in the Netherlands, we are the healthiest city, so we're quite proud of it. But we really need to do a lot of work in the future just to improve all these things. We've been working on a compact city since the 1970s. We started with a traffic circulation plan, banning cars from the city center. Cars weren't allowed anymore to pass from the one quarter to the other one. And in the 90s, we had another inner city plan where we designed the public space and prioritized also in the design the pedestrians and the cyclists in the inner city. And now from 2016 on, we're working on a new plan, creating more space for people, because the city got busier and busier. Right now we're taking out the bus routes and the asphalt and giving the space back to the people again. That you can see here. Of course, these are very nice pictures with happy people, but we also see this. The pressure on the public space is enormous at some times of the day, and logistics plays a big part in that. So That's why we have our SOAP. We had it introduced last year, and there are some measures. The final measure is introducing the zero emission zone in 2025, so that's in 3 years from now. And already this year, in the same zone, we will also introduce the time window frame for logistics. We have an area right now, but it will become a lot bigger, and there will be also supporting measures like cameras and stricter policy for entering the zone, and also extra measures like benefits for zero emission vehicles. So we see quite a big change the last year already, and I think this will continue going on. But besides making policy and implementing that, we also work on a lot of projects with companies and in the city. One of the projects is in Ulaat. We have 2 trials. The first one, I'll just tell you in a short way, because I will elaborate more on the park and ride in the second trial. The first trial is focused on shop owners in the inner city and creating a platform for logistics services in 2 ways. The first way is sharing vehicles for logistics that can use the shop owners by themselves. And the other one is a service where logistics providers optimize the service for the shop owners. And we see that a lot of cargo bike companies and other service providers have quite viable business models already for cycling logistics in Groningen. So I think we prove here that it is really possible for the future. So then the second trial of Ulaat we are doing in Groningen, which is adding logistics services at the park and ride sites around the city. This is the site where we want to place the parcel locker. It's, I think, the second biggest around Groningen. And I'll take you back in the past in 3 steps. I think somewhere in the end of the 90s we started with the park and rides, and at first it was really meant for people who went shopping in the city, who came from the region, park the car and go by the bus to the city center. And also we saw that they were quite close to the city center, the park and rides. 10 years later, in 2010, the park and ride sites were more put to the edge of the city, more outside, and it was really meant to catch the cars on the edge of the city, so the cars wouldn't enter the city anymore. And this we've been evolving. So right now in the 2020s, the park and ride sites are an integrated part of the public transport network. So here you see a map. It looks like a metro map, but it is the map of the regional bus lines in Groningen. And here you can see how the use of the park and rides has been growing in the last 10 years from 2012 on. And of course, you can see the dip during the corona pandemic. But we're going the right way again now, I guess. Hey, I'm missing a picture, but this is, here it is. You can see all the hubs in the provinces of Groningen and Drenthe, and in the square in the middle, that's the size of the map I just showed in the previous with the park and ride. So also the cities around, but smaller villages are equipped with hubs. I think we can really compare it with the story Domien told us in the first presentation. So that's also a concept that we're working on. So on the park and ride sides, the main thing is combining the different modes of mobility, and especially on the park and ride sides, the transfer from cars to a bus or to a bike. And the second, less important, but also it becomes more and more important, adding facilities like logistics to the park and rides to make the park and ride sites more comfortable for the users and maybe attract more users to use the park and ride sites. And also things like toilets and fresh water and Wi-Fi are important, we've seen. That's the sort of the context in which we are organizing the pilot or the trial within ULADS. We do it together with the public transport company and also supported by the University of Groningen. So this is the site, and the vision we are developing for parcel lockers is focused on two ideas. The first one is put them close to where people live, so they can go by foot to the parcel locker. And the second one is put them on locations where people come daily. So this is, of course, a location where a lot of people come daily. So this is the more in focus, the location, exact location where it's going to be placed. We're finally finished with all the permits and waiting on the electricity connection. So things are going on. And you can see it's part of more facilities. So next to this one is you can have shared electric bikes, but there are also a lot of parking facilities for bikes where bikes can stand dry, and also for the more expensive bikes, a closed locker. So a lot of people also use their own bikes on the park and ride side. And maybe another idea, which is not especially put in ULAD, but maybe if the opportunity shows up, we can also add another logistics service in the way of a sharing cargo bike, where the smaller SME companies like handymans or service technicians can park their van and put their stuff in the cargo bike and then go to the inner city, because the distance from this park and ride side by bike is to the inner city is 15 minutes. So that's, I think, more comfortable than going by car and paying parking money in the city. So there might be chances for this also. When you look at the target groups, I think the most important one is just the commuters. I mean, they pass here daily, and together with them, of course, the service providers, and that can logistic service providers, which can be the more national big players, but also the local ones. And as a second target group, we focus on local entrepreneurs, for instance, from the inner city. They could have their goods placed via the logistics services, cargo bike couriers, into the lockers, and maybe develop this to a bigger system of lockers around the city. But also entrepreneurs or shops more close in the shopping centers near this hub we will involve in this. So, in a nutshell, this was what I wanted to tell you about ULAS, and I think if there are questions after the next presentation, we'll get there.
Great, thanks a lot, Jauke. There are questions, so since there are many, if you want to start tackling a few of them in the chat, feel free to do so. In the meantime, Jan Tore, is your turn. So Jan Tore is our next speakers, and he will present some mobility on demand for passenger and freight examples. Jan Tore is a research and development manager at Mix and Move, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mix Move is different from the previous speakers in the form that we are a software as a service company. We provide software for managing logistics operations. And we started out by focusing on a couple of issues that are very important for urban distribution, which is making the best possible use of all transportation resources, meaning fill every vehicle to the max, at least when it leaves a hub, and also then making smart use of transport modes, whether they are bikes, whether they are vans, whether they are vessels or whatever. And all of these things is then at the core of the solutions that we offer, which are a combination of last mile management with the most important part, which is consolidation, reconstruction of cargo in hubs. In Mix Move, in MOVE21, we are responsible for a couple of things, including technology and integration, but also in supporting the living labs. Lucien started out with the objectives of MOVE21, And I've tried to take some of them down to some practical things, which is reducing emissions, essentially by selecting the right type of vehicles. Then reducing traffic, which goes well with the picture that was shown in Groningen just a minute ago, and also make the best possible use of infrastructure, because you don't want to change much if you don't have to. So the last two is essentially what we are going to talk about here, with focus on number 2. And one of the things that struck us is that cargo needs to move. And why not use the vehicles that move anyway? Buses, trams, that was always there before. But those types of things are typically, as I see it anyway, usable for moving between hubs. But the question is, can we also use vehicles normally used by people for also on-demand use by people, for also moving goods? And that is what we are going to look into as part of the Oslo Living Lab in MOVE21. And the starting point here is the public transportation company Ruter is already operating a mobility on demand for seniors, where a senior may book an on-demand service from where the person currently is to where it wants to go and when. And the ticket for that is essentially the same as for the normal bus ticket. So it's an extremely attractive solution for these types of passengers. But these services need subsidies. And one potential opportunity then is to attract these services for doing first and last mile operations. And that is what is going to be part of the Oslo Living Lab. And when it comes to cargo for these, we are essentially looking at 2 types of cargo in quotes. One that originates inside the region already covered by this service, and cargo originating outside. And if you look at the current coverage, it's not all of the city, but it's part of the city. And what we then will do when we go forward is then to use this part of the city as the shall we say, laboratory for experimenting with these types of service. And we will start by looking at cargo that originates inside this same region. When it comes to this type of cargo, we have two sources. We have one type of source that is originating when people are actually buying something in the store and they don't want to carry it home themselves. So somebody has to take it for them. Or it may be from e-commerce platforms. And we'll cover both of those. And we are going to at least start thinking about mobility hubs as something slightly different from what was presented before here, because we're really looking at shopping centers to start experimenting with these things, due to the fact that there are facilities here that we need to tap into, because we don't really want to invest in much. We want to utilize much of what we have. And at least in certain situations here, we have, these are real mobility hubs as well, in addition to providing shopping services. And we will start with one and gradually expand to the others as we go. What we do, however, is that we are, being a software company, we are concerned with what is sort of hidden behind the scenes, what has to be in place in order for things to really be able to operate. And that is the software that enables all of these things, which is not so easy to see, but if it's not there, things don't work. And when we are looking at the type of configuration that we need to have in place here, we need, first of all, on the top left, I said you need to originate cargo in stores. And then we need to have a facility and an interface for those people in the store to be able to say, somebody just purchased these items, they needed to move it from here to somewhere. Or if there is an e-commerce platform, Then we need product information, and we also need to origin and destination information from here. And there are standard interfaces between what we do and e-commerce platforms, which we already have been interfacing to, so that the cargo or the solution that MixedMove provides, which is the hub and cargo management capability, is then able to communicate through these standard interface to e-commerce platforms. Once you then have the cargo and the cargo information inside this software component, then we are able to consolidate so that all cargo that can travel together is consolidated so that it will travel together. And once you then again, and cargo traveling together is essentially if there's a range of addresses, for example, that is the destination of this cargo, then you will group them and then make sure that they travel together. In a traditional situation, we would then enter into a typical freight management transport solution for cargo carrying vehicles. However, in this case, we need to tap into the software and the management solution of those operating these pink buses, which is then tailored to handling people, selling tickets, and then providing information about origin and destination for the people. We now have to make sure that we first of all get to know what is the space in a vehicle available for cargo, so that we may then choose the right vehicle for carrying this cargo, because if it's full, obviously we can't use it. We also need to know, do we place cargo in racks? Do we place cargo in seats? Or are we utilizing the vehicle, the chairs, wheelchairs using by those who needs them for storing bigger cages with cargo? So all of these things we need to know about before we actually allocate cargo to vehicles. So that's one thing that we now need from these carrier management solution of people in order to properly plan movement of goods. We also then need something, once we have allocated these things and ordered a ticket for it, so to speak, then we need to have proof of delivery. And typically that is not part of the app that the driver of these pink buses have already. So we either need to have an extra app, which is probably what we will do in the Living Labs, because we don't want to change too much. But ideally, that same app should also be able then to record proof of delivery of cargo, not only people. So what we will then be doing in this project is to make sure that we can connect with the stakeholders involved here. We will modify the carrier management of the system already being used for carrying persons only, and put this into practice in the coming months. So this again repeats what I just said about the things with cargo carrier management. Once we then have demonstrated this in and around shopping center number 1, we'll expand to all the others inside the region. And once we've done that, we'll also then connect to cargo that originally outside, because that then relies on connecting to all the typical logistics service providers, and have them then avoid doing their own last mile services and use this capability for doing these types of services instead. And the only reason why they will do that, because then we go back to business models again, is that this is going to cost less. Because when we are implementing new urban distribution solutions, that we've been part of a couple, it is only those who are commercially viable that will survive. I mean, we have 25 years of experience where any such operation requiring subsidies, they will die eventually. they have to be commercially viable. And I think thinking right and knowing that to start with, we will be able to achieve what we want to achieve in the Oslo Living Lab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan Tore. Sorry, can you mute yourself? I hear a bit of an echo. Good. So should we jump into the panel discussion, Lucian?
I think you want to make an announcement before we do that.
Oh, right. That's you're right. So before we jump into the panel discussion, then I want to mention that we are currently recruiting some follower cities for ULADS. You have seen maybe in the chat, I posted the link to an article describing the eco zone in Mechelen. Mechelen is also doing different trials in ULADS, and we are currently selecting 2 follower cities to become part of the ULADS community of practice, and especially receive 800 euros in funding to join us in Mechelen in May to see what they are testing, and also all the things that they have already implemented in terms of urban logistics. So you can check, if you are a city authority, you can check the application form. It's quite easy and straightforward at this link, and the deadline to apply is the 28th of February. So you still have a bit of time. And even if you're not selected, you can express an interest to be shortlisted in the selection process for the next 2 study visits, which we will organize. The next one is going to be in Bremen in autumn, and then you can finally go and meet Jauke in Groningen in spring next year. So you can also do that through the same application form and apply for all the future activities of ULADS in terms of replication. And yes, with that, I think we can go back to the discussion.
So maybe here I can start, and I propose to start with a few more specific questions with Jauke and Jan Tore, and then we take a bit of perspective and look in more general terms. So I think it looks like a very interesting example, the one you mentioned with the already existing network of hubs in the Groningen and Drenthe region. So basically, you have a network with highly accessible points that was meant to be for public transport, but now it proves, very useful and very suitable to be used for last mile delivery. And I think that brings in what was mentioned at the beginning, using what already exists and make the best possible of the existing infrastructure. So, how do you see that? Can you make a comment on that?
Yes, I think it's very important to build on experiences and knowledge we already have. And when you look at the province of Drenthe, there are right now 3 locations on hubs with a parcel locker. And the stupid thing is that the parcel lockers which are used the best, they are not used by people who use the bus transfer, but people who pass by car and then pick up their parcel. So that's why we really want to use this on the park and ride facility around Groningen, because we have a way larger amount of commuters there. So that will be, we hope, that it will be used by the commuters and not by people who take their car, especially to pick up their parcel, because we already know by research from the University of Groningen that when more than 1 out of the 7 people take their car, especially for the parcel, then it has a negative effect on the number of kilometers driven by cars. So then it would be more efficient just to use the parcel delivery company delivering the parcels at your house. So it's quite it's quite hard to create let's say less kilometers by these systems. You really need a dense network, like in Mechelen. I think that's the perfect example what does work.
Thank you. Now I'll ask a question to Jan Tore, and maybe in the meantime, Mariana, you can scan over the chat to see what questions we have there. So Jan Tore, you mentioned this, things that need to be matched in the end. So of course, there are the passengers' needs, maybe they are wheelchair or their origin, their destination. But then also there are very specific things when it comes to logistics, like volume, how it needs to be packaged, if there is enough space in the vehicle. When does this become too complex so that it's not viable anymore from an operational point of view?
In traditional logistics, we have exactly the same issues. I mean, whether you are using a cargo bike, you know exactly what the capacity is there. You can't associate more cargo with a certain bike than it actually capacity is for it. And the same situation is also true when you are talking about vehicles for transporting people. So what we really need to know, as I said, we need to know the cargo carrying capacity. And once we know that, it is as easy for us to allocate cargo to such vehicles that it is for allocating cargo to the right type of traditional cargo carrying vehicle. We don't see any practical issues whatsoever in that respect, because we are already used to working with everything from bicycles to large vans, trains, and other things, and the complication in cities is not bigger than what we already are dealing with in this sense.
Okay, thank you. And maybe I'll provoke you with a more challenging question in a sense. So you mentioned the solutions that survive in the end are the commercial viable one, and of course that's true up to some point. But then we all know public transport without subsidies is not commercially viable. So public interest also plays a role there. Would you have anything to say on this dynamics?
I would say that in this specific situation, when there is a service that costs money, and there are alternatives in relating to utilizing the traditional public transportation services, there is always a decision: shall we maintain these extra capabilities to this user group, or shall we not? And if these types of services that we are now offering are competitive and combines several things with one blow, for example, reducing the number of vehicles that need to move in a certain region, obviously this will essentially become attractive. But it will be typically a discussion whether, how shall I say, if this still requires some form of subsidy to be operational. Obviously, there will be lots of debate about whether these services shall be competing with traditional freight activities or not. So there is definitely a lot of political issues here that eventually will be emerging. But at least what we have to do to start with is to make sure that, yes, we go back to the things that used to be when I grew up, namely where people and freight were actually moving together. Sometime they separated, and now we have to bring them back again.
Thank you, Jan Tore.
So I have a few questions from the chat. And one, I think, brings us back to the business model element somehow, but also brings in another component, which is, I would say, what are the benefits that this type of solution can bring to the overall community, to the city, to the citizens, and so on. So I would like to ask, well, it's not my question, but it was asked what type of efficiency improvement had been seen through this kind of micro hub consolidation. And I would enlarge the question in terms not only of efficiency, but also in terms of what type of other benefits have you seen in successful example of micro hubs consolidation centers. Jan, is your handout up to reply to this question, or?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
What we do have is in Lisbon, there is an operation where large vehicles normally were used to go to restaurants and cafes and other similar places with cargo, and they were spending quite a bit of time waiting in line, everybody. So a group of transportation companies then decided to go together and create their own, quote, mobility hub or micro hub or consolidation hub for cargo. We have measured both money and time and fill rates and all these things, and the savings are quite substantial. So without any shape or form of subsidy, this is now an ongoing and growing operation, which shows that once you really are counting your money, these types of collaboration are important. However, what we also experience is that money is not everything. Psychology is a lot. For example, people want to have their own cars driving around in the city with their own logos on. So sharing assets, sharing resources is a very touchy thing. Can demonstrate it with the fact that in one of the mobility hubs in Oslo that we are targeting here, there are 5 hubs at the moment with all different carriers because they do not want to collaborate. They see that as something which is threatening to them, not beneficial to them. But I'm not sure that it's all about money.
Thank you, Jan Tore. Žauke, you want to come in on this question?
Just react on this question, yes. I think besides, of course, a positive business model is important, but I think it's also important to look at the more societal advantages you can reach. And in other projects we also did with PostNL comparisons between different types of vehicles. So we started with a van and also a light electrical vehicle and cargo bikes, and just checked how people on the streets reacted to that, and there's a big difference in when it comes to acceptance of the types of vehicles, and it also helps when people react positively to the courier. The courier gets happier, so that's the whole system is getting better, and also the couriers or the delivery services, they feel better when they don't block the street with their big van, but just have a small vehicle which is 1 meter wide, so all the other people can pass. And so I think that's also a big advantage. But what we see now as the last few years, I think, at least in Groningen and some other Dutch cities, are the on-demand 10-minute deliveries of groceries and meals, and I mean that's annoying people. So there are it's really hard to pick the right points to have city-friendly logistics, and I think that's one thing we're struggling with, and not everything on a bike is a positive evolution, I guess. So that's we always continuously needs to stay awake to make things going the right way.
Thank you, Žauke. Jan Tore, maybe a quick comment, and then
just a small comment to that, because I mean you mentioned something which is extremely important, and that is behavior. Because you need to understand the consequences of purchasing something from the store next door and have it delivered to you on a very short delivery time. So I mean, all of these things we need to know about them. We need to be able to talk about them. We need to be able to make people aware of them. Otherwise, we will probably not get to where we want to go.
Thank you, Jan Tore. So maybe I would suggest Damian and Giacomo to bring you back on camera, and we can have a bit of a discussion among the 4 of you Lucian, do you want to kick it off, or was it my turn? I don't remember anymore.
I think we have two, large themes. They are not even topics which we might address, and I think in different forms they came along the discussion and along the question. So one is about the stakeholders involved, the types of partnerships, and who's responsible for what, who takes the lead, or who manages all this partnership, and then leading to business models. And maybe here I would really keep the question as general as it is, but I would like all of you to react to it. So how, like maybe we start with Damian. You work with a lot of cities. What are the main challenges into putting all stakeholders around the table, or the one that you think they are key?
Depends a bit from city to city, and they all have their own issues. But what I see as a main issue, coming back to in basically every project and every stakeholder involvement issue, is the timings, and where if you ask stakeholders if they want to change something, what do they want to change, how do they want to see it changed, and by the time that you start doing your changings, there's so much time in between that for those stakeholders, it's hard to keep on track with it. So as for local merchants or something, 2 months, 3 months time is a long time. As for project partners from knowledge institutes, 1 year or 2 years isn't that long. And there you have a big difference. Also for industrial players, if you have a vision of where you want to go with your company, it's usually a vision of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Some have a longer vision. But once you start, if you introduce them in a project, it's usually already 1 year in advance, and the project takes about 3 years. So there's 4 years in between. And that's too long for those partners. So timing of when you start introducing them in the project, when you start introducing them in the changing of rules or something, is really important. If you can wait long enough with it, it will be easier to keep them on board.
Thank you. Very, very interesting perspective. It's maybe same question from the city perspective then, Sjouke?
Yeah, thank you. Well, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, we always do two things, let's say. The first one and most important one is inform stakeholders, but also ask them about policy rules and change of policy rules. So when we made our SOLP, our logistics plan, we had a very big, large consultation with a lot of companies, and we created a system where we have a solid group with the business organizations. So they are representatives of all the other stakeholders, and we made them responsible for the information to their members. That's a network we created. That's one thing. So making policy, and the other thing is standing next to the companies and shop owners and businesses in creating new logistic solutions and thinking about how should we implement them, because sometimes they need a little help from the city administration, or maybe we need to change our regulations a little to make new concepts possible. So it's always going together with them. I think that's one of the main things to do. So that's how we approach it. And of course, I think we're doing a good job, but you always realize when talking to all other companies that you just talk to just a small part of all of them. And so it's the next step to take all of them with you. That's I think the most difficult one.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this all brings us to a major point, which I guess is about flexibility and the capacity of cities in being flexible in a so fast changing sector like and fast moving sector like the one of logistics. I don't know, Jan Tore, maybe? No, Lucien, you wanted to ask.
Maybe let's allow Jan Tore to react, and then I'll bring on something more.
My comment is that normally nobody have any issues with the public being responsible for the infrastructure for transporting people. But in many of the situations I've been in, everything to do with logistics is left to the companies, the private companies. And what I'm thinking here is that when you talk about SOAP, is that the first step in really making sure that the cities are now also taking charge of infrastructures for freight? And if so, are they considering then the combination of people and cargo in these things? Because it seems that the cities need to take on that responsibility as well, because the cities are about infrastructure and about capabilities, and they cannot avoid doing cargo things, because otherwise we'll get to a situation like we have with these kick bikes or e-scooters in certain cities when everything left to the private, it's all chaos.
I think it's exactly the second major theme I wanted to bring in. So we work with cities in this project. We are a cities organization. You all work with cities. So the general question would be, what's the role of cities in all this? Because you know, in some cities still local administration are not that much present into the discussion. There are some regulations about you know, the weight of the vehicles, being able to access different parts of the city, but that's basically all. But we've seen recently, you know, cities play a more and more important role. Like SULPs are rather recent instruments. And yeah, I wanted to ask each of you from your perspective, and you know, the perspective you have given your role and the role your organization plays. What do you think the role of the cities in all this is? Should they leave it all to the private sector? I think Jan Tore just responded, but maybe yeah, we have
Giacomo.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, what I showed in the presentation is that we have a long pathway, as Damian was saying. It's not cannot be done in short term from a city perspective, but in Rome, I think, despite all the difficulties, there's a clear pathway, and so we started with this SAMP, which includes measures for urban freight, but this didn't include time frame or the way to implement them. So it was stated that this would be priorities. I showed the short, medium, and long term. What is good now is that the administration, the political, there was political change a couple of months ago, and the new mayor is now has decided to implement the SALP. So this will define how and when these measures will be implemented over time. And I think what we have heard from operators in the consultation phases and in the current work with the Living Lab is that they need certainty about time frame. So there was also this question in the chat before I didn't answer, but Rome has the ambition to have a zero emission city center by 2030, and there are more regulations, sometimes imposed by the European Commission regarding air quality reduction. But anyway, it's important, as other cities are doing, to fix some long-term targets and the roadmap to get there, so that you have some intermediate steps, so that companies can make the investments that because it's not that they are against this, they just need to know when they have to do that, and when they have to lease a new electric vehicle instead of the one they have, because this gives them a comparative advantage compared to other companies that don't do that. So because all these processes are costly and require an extra cost that for some type of, especially for some type of stakeholders, is really not the main area of intervention. Like if you think of maintenance and repair services, the payable is just a means to get from point A to B or C, etc. So that's an entire part of logistics that is not really linked to micro hubs, although handymen were mentioned before, and that's something I wanted to ask Schalke actually. But so I think the most important indeed is to have a clear SALP and clear targets linked to it, and a roadmap to get there with intermediate steps.
Thank you. And this brings back to a question that was asked before on the chicken and egg question. Do you first do pilot testing, or do you start with a strong SALP vision where you already outline the things that you will implement? I don't know. Jan Tore? Yes, please go ahead. You're muted.
I said the answer to that is yes, you do both, because you really can't. Your vision is one thing, but it has to be adapted to what you learn when you're doing. So I mean, it's not either or, it's both at the same time.
And I think Schalke was agreeing.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it also helps with willingness of companies just to start thinking about new concepts and investing in clean and city-friendly vehicles, etc. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter
No,
how you start, but it really matters like just to start, and then you start your conversation and you make a bit of a closed loop of communication to continuously adapt your SOAPs, because there's always theory, there's always practicality. What I wanted to add as well to the discussion was the role of cities. What is important for me as well is that cities talk to each other and create some kind of a standardization in what they want as rules. That doesn't mean that you can't have any specific rules for every city, but it's very difficult for logistic players to keep in mind, okay, in the city of Rome, we need to deliver in this way with this type of vehicle. In the city of what's close to Rome, Bologna or something, we have to do it in a completely different way. I have no idea if Bologna and Rome are close together. Not really. Okay, sorry, but anyway, so to deliver in the same kind of, if you have the same kind of rules, it's a lot easier to adapt your types of vehicles, your business modes as well.
I want to extend this question. As you notice, I like to take stance and to get the wider perspective. So of course we all map all sorts of such pilot, and we observe them and we try to be aware of them. But then it's really important that we upscale them, and some of this innovation become mainstream. So it's not only that we test them, but they become operational. Are you aware of such tested solutions that now became mainstream and part of the regular operations of the city? I don't know, maybe you can say something about the process from testing to being mainstreamed.
I guess parcel lockers are the one of them. I mean, until a few years ago, I never used one, and now they are kind of everywhere. So maybe that was one of the fairly easy to implement solutions. I don't know if the others have other. Jan Tore.
No, I agree with that, but I think that part of what we will experience is that if you look down the road here, you have 3 parcel lockers, one from DHL, one from the Norwegian Post, and run for somebody else. And why is that? It goes for the same thing that we have now 4 consolidation hubs at the same location in the city of Oslo. So yes, one of the things is really experimenting with these type of technologies. The second thing is how best to make sure that we are not necessarily getting into uncontrollable situations. And what do we have to do either to actually to make companies and people collaborate and share resources, whether that is using the same floor space at different times of day, or whether having a neutral operator in a terminal where they just deliver cargo there, it's being consolidated across shippers and logistics service providers, and then allocated to the most efficient distribution in the city. I mean, there are so many things we still have to do here in order to make sure that these are shall I say, the best we want. And my thinking is that it's nothing about technology. It's all about people and organization to make this work.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it will take a time for things to become mainstream. I mean, we see all logistics service providers working on new concepts, and they're testing different concepts in different cities, in different projects. So I think it will take a while, and we're just in the transition phase, and in the one country and one city it's steps further than in the other. So I think that will take a long time, and I think everybody's also looking for what are the best types of vehicles fitting to a city or fitting to a company. And I think everything in between a cargo bike and a van is now popping up. At least I see it in Groningen, and every company tries different types of vehicles, and we don't know yet. I think that's also first we need to get loose from how we've been doing it for the last decades, and then finally things will become mainstream. But I think that will take a while.
Yeah, we also, I'll give you the word, Giacomo, soon. We also tend to forget when things become mainstream, because I don't know, shared micromobility was just in the tasting phase some years ago, and now it's everywhere. So, yeah. Giacomo, please. You're muted.
Yeah, I was lowering my hand instead of opening my microphone. Sorry. So no, I wanted to say what Shauga just mentioned in the end, the fact that cargo bikes, although they are still a small share, but compared to, if you think of 5 years ago, they were non-existing, and now, at least in Brussels, when I go out every day, I see many going around and distribute also from big brands. Sometimes it's big brands, sometimes it's specialized companies that do that, and they are becoming more and more known. So I think it's getting there. Then it's a matter of making it the business as usual for certain type of operations. I think this needs to be clear that they will cover a certain type of logistics operations, and we have to facilitate that shift for those sectors, sectors. I really like work that the city of Rotterdam has done in identifying the segments and subsegments of logistics, and make an estimation of what kind of operations can shift to cargo bikes, and what actually are more efficient if done with one truck once per day, possibly electric at some point. But so that you have this overall the overview, and also, yeah, I want to stress this again, that express and parcels is around 5% of the logistic movements in terms of kilometers, vehicle kilometers in the city, and there are other services that also need a lot of attention, and like service and construction and facilities, etc. So, but in terms of, yeah, like cargo bikes, parcel lockers, indeed, I think they are going quite well at the moment.
Damian, please. You're
Muted.
Okay, sorry. I kind of want to add one technology then to go into Jan Ture. Maybe has found quite a lot of impact also on last mile logistics. That's on the field of the TMS programs, the transport management systems, where you before had the normal transport management systems over long distances, just having the addresses in it. Now you have specified programs for city logistics as well, such as an Urbans or something. And those are for me also very big changes that are carried just by companies themselves as well. And they found their way into mainstream use for last mile delivery.
Thank you. Just maybe I see there is a question on decarbonization, which I think is a bit the whole reason why we are discussing all this. So the question is about what is the best micro hubs or micro zone for this. I think it's quite of an hard question. I don't know if there is a best way. But maybe I would enlarge a bit the question and ask the speakers in terms of decarbonization specifically, which type of measures have proven more efficient in your experience? So enlarging a bit the scope also in terms of what other measure can city take in terms of bringing down emission from the logistics sector? And maybe we start with your emission zone, Schauke.
Yes, we can. Well, first of all, with our emission zone, we're really focusing on the logistics inside the city. So not the logistics from a depot to the micro hub. But when it comes to this micro hub in the city, I mean, we know that the light electric vehicles are a lot more efficient on energy than the original electric vans also producing, and they are more city friendly. So there are two advantages to focus on these type of vehicles. But we do know that because they're smaller, they have a smaller range before they need to go back to the hub. So you need more smaller hubs when you have smaller vehicles. So I think in your city you need a balance of a network of hubs to become the most energy efficient, and also when it comes to decarbonization, I think you have the most efficient situation then.
Maybe yeah, we are 90 plus people around the table, so we still have 10 minutes. I'll encourage people to still ask questions if you know, if there are some pressing issues, and I'll give the word to Jan Ture, and then I'll have a question.
I think that Spoken just mentioned something which is extremely important, and that is energy efficiency. Because many people tend to say that if you just apply an electric vehicle, you are by definition emission free. But that energy also have to be produced somewhere. So at least my focus is in addition to making sure that we are using energy efficient vehicles, we also need to use them well. Because even if you're using bikes, if you have one parcel per bike, it doesn't get you where you want to go. You need to be able to find out exactly which cargo can travel together and what is the best way of doing it, so that each of these resources are well utilized. And how are you combining first and last mile? Because normally these are being taken separately. There are certain developments relating to taking waste from inside a city and outside, but there should be definitely capabilities for combining first and last mile in cities. And I think we also need to experiment on that beyond just handling waste.
Damian?
I want to add to also look at it at a holistic perspective. There isn't like one type of micro hub or consolidation hub that is perfect. If you need to look at every stream almost that goes into your city and outside your city and see which ones can you combine in which way. I'm a very big fan of the eco zone that Bpost has put in Mechelen, but that's also only for B2C delivery. It's only a small percentage of all your deliveries into the inner city, and it's only closed for the Bpost deliveries. So if you can open that system already to multiple players, that's already nice. You can do the same, for example, for construction logistics, to create a construction hub on the side of the city. For waste delivery, for waste pickups, you need to combine them with the already driving in vehicles into the city. And those kind of things, if you can start to combine them, which is very difficult to do, to be honest, then you really can optimize your system and of your complete delivery system in the inner city.
Giacomo?
Yeah, I think something else that, besides the planning and participation process, the municipality and regulation enforcement, but also I think procurement is a very important tool in the hands of public authorities, both because with that they can, for example, when they procure services and goods, they can bundle from a demand side perspective, but also to give the example as now companies are asked to shift to zero emission vehicles, and the main arguments they use, at least in Rome, is to say, okay, we have to do that. What about your waste trucks, Euro 0 that are moving around, or even the buses, although that's a different sector. But I mean, when you have the power of showing the good example as public authority, then of course you need the money for that. But it's a process that should start, and when it comes to the procurement of goods and services, it doesn't really require additional resources. It needs to be well planned, and we had a project, there was a European project BISET about that, where many European cities have mapped their blueprint in terms of procurement, and then they intervened on making it more efficient, and this reduces a lot the number of deliveries and the number of kilometers driven. So there's also some practical actions that local authorities can put in practice.
Okay. And then there is a question in the chat to Domian. Do you suggest to realize sector-specific hubs or consolidation centers? And because we talk about types of hubs, I'll also add the question that was asked before. Are there different types of hubs or solutions depending on the type of planning in a different part of the city? So, for example, city centers are more organically developed, not so much planned. But then there are, I don't know, more planned districts with grid structure, or maybe with a hierarchy of streets with boulevards and capillaries. Are there differences that come from this sort of things? And we start with Domian.
To answer on the question of Bartumula, do you suggest to realize sector-specific hubs? I would not suggest to do this immediately, but I think that for some sectors you will need this. Like construction will have different needs as for parcel deliveries, and it will be very difficult to combine them. But if it's possible to consolidate them, I think you should, because you can optimize your kilometers for sure. Not all of them will be possible, just For the second part of your question, Lucian, I think, of course, the infrastructure of the city will have a big impact. Only to think about, there was an example of chocolate delivery into the inner city of Ghent. Ghent has a lot of cobbled streets, and all the chocolates were flying everywhere. Yeah, okay, that's an issue. you need to find another way to deliver this then, or you need to find another way how to keep it intact in your cargo bike. So these kind of very practical issues are linked with the infrastructure of the city.
Okay, maybe a reaction from Groningen and Rome. You have the same differences, like a historical city center, more planned districts. Anything specific about that?
Well, I did want to react on the procurement rule. Can I take this? Yeah, I can. I can. I think it's important to practice what you preach, but even more important to practice before you preach. So I think before we come up with regulations for companies, first as a city administration, we have to do the things ourselves in the right way. So I showed the picture of the bus lines of Groningen. Well, all the buses on these lines are electric or hydrogen, so they are fully zero emission. But also when it comes to vehicles for waste collection, that's zero emission, and also the goods and services we procure. We try to demand zero emission transport. So I think all cities should start with doing things like that, because then also the market companies cannot stay behind. So I think we need to take our responsibility.
Giacomo, then Jan Tore, and then
yeah, no, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't work for the municipality, but yeah, I know that. I mean, there's a specific and stricter targets for the city center, in particular the area of the very small area in the inner center, where that's the area where by 2030 only zero emission vehicles will be allowed. But the idea now is to expand with different targets at different times, like progressive targets over a very big area that is called the railway ring. That it's, I mean, compared to other cities, it would be like 3 or 4 other normal cities together. So compared to Rome, it's still a smaller area, but it's the extension of Rome is really huge. It's like the second city in Europe after London. So now that London is gone, it's the first. But so it's so there's a different policy for the city center, where you also need to, there are historical dimensions to be preserved, but the idea is not to limit it to that, but to address also neighborhood policies, also in line with the 15 cities concept that still needs to be developed, but where logistics also play a role.
Jan Tore, quickly.
Yes, and
you're muted now.
Sorry. Schalke indicated that you have to sort of do things before you preach things. And I think that in addition to what you just indicated, is that as somebody who buys goods, it's not necessarily only about using emission-free transportation. You may also then see how you then can change from having freely delivered to a certain address to go through this network of city hubs to provide cargo through that infrastructure, rather than in the traditional way, leaving it to the shippers, the cargo providers, to design what the logistics is. And to finish off with, it's all about networks of hubs. They're not necessarily all the same, but you really need to think about which type of hub do you need where in order to achieve the targets that you really want.
Over
Thank you.
to Adriana for the closing.
Thanks, Lucian, and thanks you very much to all the speakers and the participants for this very engaging discussion. Just a quick announcement before we close. There will be an upcoming webinar on the 10th of March, focusing specifically on setting up mobility and cargo bike hubs, and with a focus on stakeholder engagement. So if you wish to continue this discussion, I will just put the link to register in the chat, and you are welcome to join there as well. And for today, once again, thanks everybody. I know we will work together closely in the future, so it was a pleasure to have this webinar with you.
Thank you to all
Thank you.
participants.
Thank you.
Thank you all.